Do you prefer paying? Do you prefer an equal split? Or do you prefer that the person who plans the date pays for it? Also, would you like it if a woman treated you on the first date? Story 1. I always paid. The one exception was on my first date with my wife, who took the bill while I was in the restroom. Story 2. Both have to agree on the place and split the cost equally. If one of us wants to go to a high-class restaurant, then it is that person who pays. There is no need to lose or force someone to lose a kidney over a first date. Story 3. I will pay for the first date. I will pay for every date if she deserves it. If I feel like she does not deserve it, we probably will not be dating much longer. Story 4. Depends on the context. Dating apps should be 50-50. Too many women use them as meal tickets. When dating from in real-life meetings, I prefer to pay. Even if the person being asked to pay makes the most sense overall, I would feel odd not at least going Dutch. With that said, I am still expecting that I will be paying first. Story 5. I'll pay, but on a few conditions. 1. The first date should not be expensive. If the date continues elsewhere, we split the cost. It doesn't have to be 50-50. Story 6. I don't mind paying on the first date. I have never thought the woman should pay. It doesn't bother me at all. If a woman insisted on paying, I would appreciate it, but I would never expect it. Story 7. Do you prefer paying? No. Do you prefer a 50-50 split? Absolutely. Or do you prefer that whoever plans the date pays for the date? That sounds like I am going to be paying again. Also, would you like it if a woman treated you on the first date? Sure. Story 8. It depends on how the date went. If I connected with her well and know that there will be a second date, I wouldn't mind paying. However, if I don't feel that connection, then no. I prefer splitting the bill equally as it will be the last time we see each other. Story 9. A scenario in which men can't win. Here's why. 1. You pay and the woman then ignores you. She has gained a free meal and you lost money. The woman does not owe you anything, so if she does not want another date, that is fine. However, to ignore you rather than communicate is completely disrespectful. You suggest splitting the bill evenly. I can almost guarantee there will not be a second date. Although men and women have equality, both still have some expectations about what each gender should do. You let the woman pay, which rarely happens. If you insist that she pay or let her pay, you may be instantly blocked or ignored, as many women still expect the man to pay. Dating as a man these days is very challenging because there is criticism no matter what you do. It is constant and seems to be a growing trend. Story 10. I don't think anyone prefers paying for someone they are meeting for the first time. However, someone has to, and as a straight male, if you do not, any chances you might have had will be lost. Story 11. I was raised to pay, so I would feel odd not paying. Splitting expenses evenly seems to be the standard now. I should also add that I am married, so I have not really dated in a while. The comment about splitting expenses evenly was something I noticed regarding my client's preferences for having control in the dating process. Story 12. What I do know is that I paid and my married friends paid on the first date for the woman. Yes, it might be traditional and outdated, but the women who like it and the men who like doing it often connect and work out. Story 13. Do you prefer paying? No one prefers paying for ungrateful people. Yes, most women are ungrateful for it. Or do you prefer that whoever plans the date pays for the date? You mean men? 99.99% of the time, it is men who have to plan dates. Do you prefer a 50-50 split? That would be fair, but not an option if a man actually wants something from his date. It is definitely the option everyone should choose if they already know that there will not be a second date. Story 14. I always do a 50-50 split now. Nobody gets offended that way. If they do, they are not worth taking out. A girlfriend gets more benefits. Story 15. Pay your share on the first date. We are still strangers. If she offers to pay in full, I would decline and pay my part, with the offer to take turns on future dates. Story 16. I always pay for a date, but if she indicates that she feels entitled to my money, that is an immediate red flag and I suggest splitting the bill 50-50. It is one of those subtle cues, like how they treat the wait staff, that I use to decide whether a second date is possible. I like paying personally, but I dislike dating people who feel endlessly entitled to my money and effort. I want a partner, not a daughter. Story 17. I don't feel good about it, but I have accepted it. I would be happy if women insisted on equal partnership. Story 18. When I was single, I always paid on the first date. I had no issue with paying. However, I always looked for them to offer to split. I wouldn't take them up on it, but it was the gesture that counted. By at least the fourth date, they should cover something. Story 19. If I ask a woman out on a date, I will pay. If a woman asks me out on a date and I think the date is going well, I will still pay. The cost of a date is not something financially that will keep me up at night. Story 20. Do you prefer paying? No. Do you prefer a 50-50 split? No. Or do you prefer that whoever plans the date pays for the date? No. Also, would you like it if a woman treated you on the first date? Free things, yes. I prefer no money to be spent on a first date. That way no money is wasted. Someone looking for money is not looking for me because I am not a bank. A woman who likes wasting money will waste her husband's money, and that will not be me. Story 21. I do well for myself. I pay. However, if there is no offer to pay their half, then there will be no second date. Story 22. Common courtesy and tradition. A first date should be coffee and conversation. Make sure you actually like the other person and get along. There is no sense in going all out and spending a lot of money if you discover you do not share similar interests, beliefs, and are exact opposites. Story 23. I always used to be willing to pay, but I would be more impressed if a girl at least asked to split the bill. Story 24. I would pay for drinks or minor snacks if I ended up dating someone I already know as a friend. Not a full dinner. If I do not know them well, I pay for my own expenses only. I have never been in a situation where I was asked to pay for their expenses. Story 25. I would have liked to have paid, but on the first date with my wife, she said, "I'll be back soon." Later, I said, "I'll pay," but I didn't know she already had. We have been married for almost 11 years. To answer your question, I felt like there was nothing I could do about it, so there was no point in worrying. Story 26. Depends on what we are doing. The last first date that I had was literally getting coffee. If I cannot afford a $3 cup of coffee, I should not be on a date. Period. Story 27. If I ask a woman out with a specific location and time, like a traditional date, I feel that I should pay because I am courting her. This is usually if I did not know her prior. Usually, my dates happen because we already know each other and she is interested. I just ask her to hang out, and then I expect her to split the costs 50-50. We are courting each other, so to speak. So it depends on the context. Story 28. Always 50-50. Why would I pay for a woman whom I do not even know? I do not owe her anything. Any girl who does not do that will not be dating me. Story 29. I pay because 1. I prefer to avoid potential conflict when getting to know someone. I have enough money that I do not need to worry about it. Yes, I have likely been taken advantage of by women looking for a free meal, but oh well. If a woman offered to pay for me, I would be pleasantly surprised. If she offered to split the bill congenially, that is fine. If she offered to split and I get a bad vibe, I would assume she is trying to end the night and does not want another date. Story 30. The fact that we are still required to pay is proof that women do not actually want and cannot handle equality. Story 31. If I am out to dinner with a woman, I already know she is worth my time and I would gladly pay for her dinner. If she is there just for a free dinner and some drinks, she can pay for herself. This does not mean I expect good times afterward. It means I want a lady who can hold a conversation, is interesting, and makes the evening a fun one to remember. Quality over quantity. Story 32. Everyone, we need to raise the standard one step at a time. By sharing the expenses fairly, we will create a future where this problem no longer exists for our sons and grandsons. For our boys. Story 33. I refuse to pay for anything anymore. I will not even share a drink with them. Sure, she can offer to pay for me, but I would wonder what she was getting at. I would keep my wits about me. Story 34. Whoever asks pays, but not just for dates. In my culture, it would be very impolite to invite someone out and expect them to pay. Story 35. If I like her and I liked the date, I pay. You can pay next time we go out. If I did not like it, we split the bill. Story 36. I don't mind. A first date is not going to be at a place that will cost me hundreds of dollars. I am fortunate enough to have enough money to pay an extra $50 for someone else's meal. If I invite someone to go out, I expect to pay for it. If they want to cover their half, that is just an added bonus. When I was dating, I respected the women who insisted on paying their half. It has been a few years, though. Now I am engaged, and I pay for everything because my partner provides our housing and is planning our wedding while I work. Story 37. I don't mind paying, but I like it if she at least offers to contribute. Most times I'll decline, but her reaching for her wallet is the polite thing. If she wants a 50-50 split, that's fine too. I know some women don't feel comfortable paying for a meal on a first date, so I never bother with the no, you put that away, no, I got this, no, I'll pay, I insist routine. When cash was still common, if the bill was, say, $85, I'd pull out $2.50s and a $20 and say, hey, you got $15 on you, so I don't have to break a 50? I might also say, if I get the movie tickets, do you want to get the popcorn? I caught several dates who showed up totally broke and expected me to pay for everything, which I find rude. I remember once going to the bathroom and paying the bill on my way back, where she wouldn't have known or seen. We sat down and chatted for another 10 minutes, and then she just got her things together and started walking out. I said I had already paid, and she responded, well, yeah, duh. That was a bit gross for me. In short, I'm happy to pay and usually do, but the polite thing is for the lady to not show up broke, not expect me to pay, and make some kind of tacit offer to contribute by reaching for her wallet or offering in some way. I even like hearing, thanks for paying. Maybe I can get the next one. It's a cute way of asking for a second date. Story 38. Honestly, I will always pay on the first date. It is not that big of a deal. Also, if a woman paid without me asking, she would receive a lot more in return than she paid for, not necessarily cash, but I would definitely have a soft spot for her. Story 39. I usually go for drinks. I do not make a big deal about paying for something that costs 0.24% of my monthly income, especially if I enjoyed the date and would like to see her again. Even if I do not want to see her again, one drink is a small price to pay to find that out. So, I guess if paying for a drink is not worth it in your mind, do not go out for drinks with that woman. Story 40. I go into the date assuming I will pay because I assume she is not entitled to it. If she is rude or something, then we split the bill. If she racks up a huge bill, then I go to the bathroom and leave. Story 41. I'm happy to pay the first time, but I am also happy to split the cost evenly. What concerns me is that after a couple of dates, they never offer to share expenses. Story 42. It's all about feelings. I usually pay for coffee dates. Not too bad financially. If I feel good about the prospects, I am willing to pay for a meal. If I am more reserved about the prospects, I stop at coffee or desserts. I spent the most on a meal during a date that was quite horrendous. She deliberately knew she hit my deal breaker. I am child-free and she wanted kids. I was upset. On the other hand, I went on a coffee date and the girl was hungry, so she wanted to eat and I paid. I didn't plan to eat or pay, nor was there any indication that the coffee date would turn into a lunch date. I ended up marrying this girl. Story 43. If I asked her out, I have no issue paying for the first date. That said, if we are going for a second or third place for drinks, it is nice if the woman offers to pay for something. Story 44. 50-50 if we are talking about a meal, which I do not do, but I do not mind paying for coffee. For alcohol, I like taking turns paying for both. It is nice. Story 45. If I asked for the date, meaning I invited you to it, then I will pay for it because it was my idea and is part of the courting process. If you protest about it and do it more than once, then sure, you can pay for your portion of the bill. A caveat to that is if you do anything to disrespect me, restaurant staff act foolishly, run up a $6,000 tab, or engage in generally unacceptable behavior, then I will pay for what I purchased and you will pay for what you purchased. Story 46. I think honestly, when going into dating someone, it is most likely the man who initiates the date. Therefore, I would say the men should pay on the first date. Story 47. First date or first meeting. I don't go on a date with someone I don't know. If we met through an application, it will be something casual, like coffee or drinks. If it goes well, I will probably pay the bill, but not if she chooses the most expensive craft cocktail or wine. Story 48. I will gladly pay if she acts super sweet and is a nice person, or if I ask her out to date. In every other case, 50-50. Story 49. I will always pay if I am the one who asks the woman out on a date. However, I never pay because I stopped dating a long time ago and decided to stay single. Story 50. I have a general rule. The person who suggests the date should pay for it. Just like the rapper 50 Cent said on television. I agree with that, but I have no problem paying for the date. Story 51. Honestly, I think it should be the other way around. If we are dating, why not go 50-50? After you are exclusively mine, I would pay for most things if my partner is reasonable and within budget. I would hope that sentiment is reciprocated in some form or another. I dislike the one-way expectations in society. Story 52. I have never paid in full on a first date. Every date I have been on, we either pay 50-50 or, on rare occasions, the woman will pay for both of us. Story 53. A coffee or perhaps a light drink, such as a beer or a cocktail, I would not mind offering to pay if the atmosphere is good and the date looks promising. This does not mean, however, that the other person should come with the expectation and demand to be treated and become almost offended by the idea of splitting the bill equally. It is a privilege, not a right. Story 54. I usually pay, but a first date is usually something like coffee, low-key, and inexpensive. If one of us isn't feeling it, we can leave early without it being awkward. Story 55. It is tough to say. I know some women who want to have dinner but do not want to spend money, so they go on a date and just say it is not for them. Normally, I would not have a problem with paying on a first date, but as always, someone has to mess it up for everyone. Story 56. It's been a long time since I had a first date, but back then I always paid. I did not think anything of it because at the time that was just how it was. Even now, I would probably just do it due to conditioning. Story 57. The amount of effort she puts into looking the way she does is usually 10 times what I do. I will pay. Story 58. Everyone should pay for their own expenses as a rule of thumb. For something inexpensive, such as a coffee date where the total combined expense is less than $10 to $15. Picking up the bill can be a nice gesture but should not be expected, nor is it indicative of virtue. If one person is especially wealthier, that individual can decide to pay for the other due to their privileged economic position. Strangers are not owed unearned generosity, and the individual planning a date is not automatically responsible for paying for other people. A date is a mutual agreement. Therefore, the cost burden should be shared, especially if the two people are still getting to know each other and are not partners. Additionally, the modern economy is challenging for everyone. Many men and women are living with their families, which is not a bad thing but seems abnormal in the United States due to historic conditions of surplus and individual independence. Most jobs, especially for young adults, pay modest salaries. A man making $18 an hour should not be excluded from the possibility of dating, nor should he be judged negatively if he does not want to spend more money on every date he goes on. Story 59. It is not cool, but whatever. I am usually happier pulling my own weight, so my date paying for it would also feel awkward. Story 60. Whoever sends the invite pays. I have always been open to contributing. I get the movie ticket and she offers to buy the popcorn. I get dinner and she gives the tip. Story 61. The last woman I dated lived a short distance from me. We worked it out so that if we both traveled, we split the cost. If she traveled, I paid, and when I traveled, she paid. The first date's drinks were on me. Story 62. I do not mind paying, but I never go anywhere fancy for the first date. I also tell them I will pay if they tip. Seeing how women tip tells you a lot. Most cannot do simple math. Story 63. Sure, I'll pay as long as I think you are worth it. Maybe you should offer to pay as well, or we can split it. I would be interested. I'm not a free meal ticket. Also, the first date should cost less than $20. I do not know you. Coffee and a walk are enough. Do you need an expensive dinner for the first date? Go away. Story 64. No worries at all, but it's a coffee or something. Dinner on a first date is unnecessary and generally a bad idea. A first date is coffee, fish and chips at the beach after a road trip, a walk and ice cream, or doing an activity like mini golf. I'm not worried about paying. I'm not going to a nice dinner with someone I barely know because that is a bad idea, even before considering who pays. Story 65. I pay on the first date. If she does not say something like, I could, or I'll pay next time, then I see it as a red flag and there will not be a second date. If the woman does pay on the first date, I would be impressed. However, it is more about intent and not the actual money. Story 66. Typically, I go Dutch. If it is cheap, like coffee or a cocktail, I will cover it. If we go to a second location, I will ask her to pay for that portion. For the most part, I have never gotten pushback for suggesting she pay for a portion. Only a handful of times have I had the woman express that she expected me to cover everything, which was fine because I have the money, but it meant there was no second date. Story 67. I always pay on the first date. It would not seem right if I did not. If a girl treated me on the first date, I would be genuinely surprised. Story 68. I do not think I would ever mind paying, especially if I am looking forward to spending time with them. However, I would appreciate it if they at least offered to pay the bill. Story 69. 1. Did you ask her out? Then you pay whether it went well or not. Are you dating for a short fling? You pay. Are you dating for love and long-lasting relationships? Then put your best self forward. Don't half-ass the effort. You pay. Is she the type of girl who has her hair done, nails done, makeup, and nice clothes? Is she making you look good? That's all expensive, so she's already done 50%. You pay. Future transactions should be more equitable. Story 70. For me, I never cared about who is paying. At some point, I noticed women are strange about it. Some say yes, some say no. It is a big deal to them. So, I just pay until I hear otherwise. If I notice she is taking advantage of me, then I stop paying anything. Story 71. I think the whole Americanized way of dating is backwards, which causes the reluctance to pay. There is no logical reason for someone to treat a stranger to an expensive dinner because they said, maybe romance. Dinner dates and other more expensive activities are for couples in my cultural circle. Before that, people usually meet in ways that do not cost much, casually so to speak. A coffee date, a walk, or hangouts in a larger friend group where everyone usually pays for themselves or everyone buys rounds. The focus is intentionally not on monetary things because before thinking about finances, one has to be comfortable spending time with the other person. Neither person's time is more valuable than the other's, so there is no need for either to compensate the other for showing up. If either feels like that, it is already a detrimental statement of the perceived value difference. Story 72. I am old-fashioned. I have always paid on the first date. I feel that I am seeking a woman's attention, and I have no problem paying. Story 73. Depends on what I am paying for. If it is a Big Mac, yes, I can buy that. But if it is some 5-star restaurant where white bread costs 20 euros, I am not paying for that. Story 74. Prefer not to do things where it matters. Activity dates are better than traditional dinner and movie. In summer, go to events, festivals, and activities where you can enjoy the simple things. Story 75. I offer and never bluff, but I do not make a big deal about it. I do not think first dates should be anywhere too fancy anyway. My first date with my current long-term partner was at a coffee shop that I paid for, and it cost about $13 for both of us. Story 76. I've always paid but would definitely not see someone again if they did not offer to split or at least mention that they would pay next time. I paid for every date 99% of the time. As long as there is no expectation, I am more than happy to pay. Story 77. Do I prefer paying? Of course not. I am not a fan of spending money, but that goes both ways. If someone is kind enough to give me an evening of their time, expecting them to take on an additional unexpected expense just to do so is unreasonable. When I ask someone out, I do it with the expectation that I will pay the entire bill. If they offer to split the costs, I will put up a token resistance for the same reason, but I will not argue. If they do not like the idea of me paying for everything, I am happy not to spend money to make them more comfortable. Story 78. I have no issues paying for everything we do as long as she offers to pay at least for her half. If she does not offer, I will take that as a red flag. Story 79. I would like to split the bill. However, if I am asking a woman out, I will pay. You just have to accept it and do it. If you are penny pinching or triggered by it, do not date. Story 80. I stopped using dating applications because of this. It is too awkward paying for someone I do not know and equally awkward going 50-50 on dates. It is extremely awkward having a woman pay for the first dates. When I offer to pay, some women react strangely as if it is not normal. All of this kills the vibe for me. I have chosen to opt out of that strange dating situation. Story 81. The first date for me would always be Dutch, depending on how we click. I would pay for dates, but a coffee date is always preferred. Everyone feels safe without spending a lot on fancy wine and dining, just conversations with one another. I am not a fan of going for drinks, as it can lead to skewed views or a morning mistake nobody wants. Coffee is always the safe bet or a similar alternative. Story 82. I would pay for the first date. If I did not feel like paying for the first date, then I am probably not interested. That is just me, though. Story 83. I pay. I have only been on one first date, and I have come to learn she is one of those women who might have had only $3 in her wallet that night. But that did not matter. I pay whenever we go out, period. Story 84. 50-50. If the interest is mutual, both can pay their share, especially in this economy. I paid for all her expenses later during a time when she had to re-educate to switch job fields. By that time, she was already my wife. Now that she earns, she covers a bit more of the everyday costs to compensate for the time it took her to finish her education. She wants to do that. It will not break even, but it does not have to. Story 85. I think people put each other under too much pressure when it comes to this. I typically like having enough money to pay for the date myself, but appreciate when a woman wants to pay her share. It does not have to be 50-50. I also look at it this way. A woman who is willing to pay her share does not put herself in a position to owe her date anything. I have a lot of respect for women who do this because it shows a lot of self-awareness not only for her date but for herself as well. Story 86. Splitting costs equally would be better. The person who makes the plans still ends up paying. This happens because women often believe in traditional gender roles when it comes to dating and are reluctant to ask men out. Story 87. It depends on the setting and context. On a normal date at a regular restaurant or location, I believe the man should pay. If the occasion is expensive, the person who planned it should cover the cost. If it is just getting a coffee, each person should pay for their own. While a man should be able to pay this small amount, insisting that he must pay can seem petty. Story 88. I think if I start dating again, I will go for coffee or a zero-cost first date. If that is a deal breaker for them, it will save me money and trouble. Story 89. I have learned long ago that if a girl is not even willing to offer to pay for half, she is not worth the chase. Story 90. I will pay for the first and I will even pay for the second. But if the girl does not offer by the third, there will not be a fourth. Paying indicates generosity and should be mutual. Story 91. Never think of it. I always pay for the first, second, third date and so forth. If they absolutely insist on going 50-50, then I will allow it, but not on the first date. Call me naive, stupid, or whatever. I just feel it is my duty. Story 92. I haven't dated since high school, but I think it would also matter a lot what the date is. If she is cool with meeting for burritos and walking around Main Street, I'll likely cover the burrito. If she suggests the nicest place in town and racks up a $150 bill for just hers, she better have her wallet with her. Then again, unless we have some history, I'm likely not going out with someone who wants an expensive meal as a first date anyway because that is not my personality and I do not want to set that precedent. Story 93. I feel that if you are asking someone out, it is expected that you pay for the first date as compensation for their time. If they are interested, they will ask you on the second date and pay for it themselves. Think about it this way. When the check arrives at the table, take the initiative and pay for it. If she stops you and offers to split the bill evenly, say something like, "How about you pay the next time we go out?" This way, you can determine if there is genuine interest. Story 94. I don't really care. If I offer to pay and she isn't interested, she should suggest splitting it. Story 95. I offer to be polite but do not follow up unless she refuses and pays her own bill. Story 96. I have always found the idea that men have to pay for dates sexist and insulting. At the same time, it is expected from women. I feel it is a relic from the days when women did not work. My first girlfriend and I paid for our own food. I had asked for it. We have been together for 16 years, but she admitted she found it a bit cheap. However, she understands my viewpoint. Today, we split everything 50-50 proportional to income. I was young back then, and I do not know if I would have had the courage to ask for a 50-50 split again. I hope I never have to date again, especially with how difficult dating sounds nowadays and men paying for many dates that lead to nothing. All I know is that any date who would ask me to pay 50-50 would be an instant green flag. Story 97. A girl asked me out to a nice restaurant for a first date. I asked to split the bill since it was our first date and I would not have chosen such an expensive place. She then became upset, saying she did not care about paying the entire bill for us and the people beside us. This was at least my 10th first date from online applications because the profiles are mostly fake, so I cannot justify spending over $150 each time. After that, I only agreed to quick coffee dates, which I do not mind paying for. Story 98. I think you should buy your own thing on the first couple of dates. Then on the third or fourth date, someone should grab the check. Man or woman. I don't care which. I was fresh out of a divorce and met a younger woman. I was 29, living in an apartment, and she was 23, living at home. The divorce drained me. I was selling things just to get $10 for gas. I barely broke even every paycheck. On our first date, we met for coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I was so excited. However, I had only pennies in my account. I was then so stressed that she'd expect me to pay. She was already there, bought her own coffee, and waited for me. Her personality was bubbly and alive. She was the best thing I had ever laid my eyes on. That was 13 years ago. I made her my wife, and I love her more every day. Story 99. If the only thing I receive in return for covering the full bill is her company, then I am not interested. Story 100. If I ask her out, I fully expect to pay the bill. If she asked me out, I would expect her to pay the bill. In both cases, it would be polite to offer to help. However, I am going to refuse, and I assume she would do the same if she were paying. Story 101. I am old school in that I will pay for the first meeting, but I like to stick to something small like coffee or an outdoor activity. Story 102. Tired of seeing this question online? Simple. If you invite the person, you are paying. If you like each other, it is her turn to invite you out somewhere and pay for it. If she does not invite you, it means she does not like you or likes you for the wrong reasons, which is good riddance at that point. This is how you set the pace for a relationship of reciprocity, and as a bonus, you can tell the real intentions of the person. The same applies to friends with benefits relationships. Story 103. Not straight but do date women. I always pay on the first date. I like traditions of deference to women. I think with everything a lot of men put women through, these are the last bits of gendered behavior we should be focusing on. Story 104. I have always paid on the first date if I asked her out, regardless. Sometimes there would not be a second date, so I would stop there. Story 105. Prefer 50-50, of course. Reality is I pay if I want a second date. By the third date, I am hopeful they at least offer to pay something. If they do not, that generally means they expect to be cared for in all things, in which case I call it a poor investment and end it there. Story 106. Totally fine with it. I'm the one asking for the date, so therefore it's on me. Don't get on a high horse about having to split the bill. That just comes off as entitled and weird. Just be the gentleman and pay. The crucial part comes on the second or third dates to see if she reciprocates or at least offers to. It's just called common sense. I'll pay first, but then it's your turn to offer, and we'll at least split it. Story 107. Whoever plans should pay. 99% of the time, that is the man, and that is fine. However, no one likes paying for someone who is ungrateful. It is annoying when the woman feels entitled to it rather than recognizing it for what it is, a kind gesture. Similarly, it is a problem when some men view it as transactional and feel entitled to sex afterward. Both parties need to view it as a kind gesture. It is not a kind gesture if you expect something in return. Story 108. I prefer it because nothing shuts down hanging out afterward like discussing money. If I am always paying, I eventually shut it down with no explanation. I do not owe them anything. They have been compensated for their time. Story 109. Hate that outdated and very sexist dynamic. It's an instant -10 points for any or all girls who don't offer to pay their part. Also, would you like it if a woman treated you on the first date? I would hate it the same. It's still an unbalanced IOU that makes no sense in the context of a date with a person you don't know. Also, I dislike guys who voluntarily perpetuate that sexist nonsense. Story 110. Yes, because I am not going to an upscale restaurant or doing a bunch of expensive, involved activities. The first date is essentially the interview for dating and should be held at a coffee shop or another inexpensive location. Story 111. I think the person who invites should be prepared to pay the entire cost. However, at the same time, the invitee should be comfortable with splitting the expense. Story 112. I am happy to pay for the first date. It is something I believe I should do, and it feels natural to me. If she insists on splitting the cost evenly or paying for the entire date, I will not argue too much, as it is important that she feels comfortable. Story 113. Unless it is a cougar or sugar baby situation, I do not want the woman paying on the first date. It would be nice if we lived in a culture where it is more acceptable to split the bill on the first date. However, that is not the culture I live in, so I would rather pay unless the date is going really badly and it is clear we are not going to see each other again. Once we get to know each other, if you want to pay, that is fine. We can also mix in free or low-cost activities. Story 114. I'm happy to pay for drinks or a cheap meal, but I expect her to return the favor on the second date at a bare minimum. The number of women I have seen get visibly offended at the idea of splitting a bill is hilarious and a complete deal breaker. Story 115. You should expect to pay for the first date. That is part of the social contract in society. Many women will speak up and offer to pay for their portion in my experience, which is fine with me. I do not want a woman to feel any type of debt or coercion because of a coffee. I have been dating my girlfriend for almost 4 years now, and I get the bill about 7 out of 10 times. I do not really keep track. Story 116. If she is not acting entitled or like a diva about it, I have no issue paying for dates, whether it is the first or many. It is when payment is expected and not appreciated that I develop an issue with paying. Entitlement is never a good look on anyone. Story 117. If I invite you to dinner, I am buying. If you invite me, I expect the same. I can always ask you to go Dutch with me if it is something too expensive. This is not meant in any way to be derogatory to anyone from the Netherlands. I do not know how the phrase originated. It is just what we say when we ask if you want to come but pay your own fee or tab. Story 118. If I have interest in a woman and take the time to ask her out with me, then I will pay, but only as a kind and appreciative gesture of her time. If the vibe is not what I expected, there will not be a reason to pay for a second. However, if the woman is asking to hang out with me, then we can cover our own expenses and simply enjoy each other's company. Having boundaries does not have to be rude or stingy. Story 119. First date, I like to pay. If she does not at least offer to split the bill on that date, I probably will not be seeing her again. Entitlement is a huge turnoff. Story 120. I don't really prefer it or anything. I usually pay because I'm the one who asked and planned it. I would not mind if the woman treated me on the first date. After the first couple of dates, we usually end up going 50-50 anyway, where we switch off. The women I've dated just prefer it. Story 121. Hi original poster. Here is my unpopular opinion. I pay on the first date and on most dates afterward. The only exception would be if it was my birthday. Then I would let her pay if she wanted to. Story 122. I split. It has never been a problem, and I have almost always gotten further dates if I thought it went well. That said, I tend to date successful professionals where we are both making a decent income. Your mileage may vary with other kinds of people. Story 123. Whoever asked the other person out should pay, in my opinion. With social norms, that usually means the man pays. Although both parties should have their wallet with them in case something happens where they would need to pay. Story 124. My friends all take turns unofficially buying lunch or sometimes dinner. Buying someone a meal is no big deal, and I am glad to do it for someone I like. I do not invite people I do not like to dinner. Sometimes it is to a nice restaurant, sometimes it is to McDonald's. It depends on where I want to go. Story 125. I will pay for the first date and any other dates that are my idea. We never talked about it, but my partner and I have been together for 3 years, and she is really good at trying to keep things equal. We do not keep a ledger or anything, but if I buy the concert tickets, she pays for the dinner bill and so on. Story 126. I go for pretty cheap dates anyway, under $20, so I do not really have an issue paying. Is it inconvenient? Yes. But being alone is harder. Story 127. If she does not offer to split the bill, she was not raised properly. If he allows her to split the bill, he was not raised properly. Story 128. If I ask her on a date, I think it makes the most sense for me to pay. I was raised to pay and it just feels right to me. I am approaching you because I want something, and you should not have to pay. Story 129. I do not know why anyone would consider any other option. Yes, you pay on the first date. If she insists on paying later to be nice on occasion, there is nothing wrong with that. Story 130. I prefer to pull out my handy kitchen scale and weigh both dishes. We can split the meal based on the percentage of each dish minus the tip. I'm not rude. I'll cover that. I am a proponent of equality. Don't worry, I zero out the scale first. Story 131. Speaking as a man on team, guys should pay. I think where many men mess up is taking women to a place on a first date to do something they would never want to do or never want to go on their own, solely for the purpose of impressing her. I am not saying a man should not impress in some way on a first date, but there are more ways to impress than how much you spend on a date. Story 132. I always thought the person who invites someone out should pay for dinner, or at least that should be the standard. Story 133. I always pay. Cannot think of a reason not to. The women are my guests, and guests do not pay. Story 134. I would tell women I split the bill on the first date when I was dating. Most were fine with it. Others did not like it. It most likely would not have worked out with those who did not like it anyway. Story 135. I am conflicted about this. I always pay for the first date. Then I think whoever plans it should cover it, within reason. I have gone on 2 dates with someone. I paid for the first one and she paid for the second. I was not expecting it, so I left the tip then. It is refreshing to go out with someone who does not expect their way to be paid. It is a nice gesture, but when expectation replaces gratitude, I have a hard time fully paying. Story 136. I don't mind paying on the first date, but I need her to show that she wants to pay, take out her wallet, ask to pay half, or leave the tip. I don't mind what, because I'll say, don't worry, I will pay. All I care about is the attitude, so I don't feel used. I dated many women who didn't offer to pay their part and never saw them again. Story 137. I was raised in the South, but have always been very respectful and open-minded. It would never occur to me not to pay, even if the date did not go well. I am happily married now, but if I were dating, I feel the only time I would have them pay is if we mutually agreed. It would have to be a serious situation for that to happen, and if that were the case, I would probably just pay to get it over with. Story 138. In my opinion, Dutch is best, but I have yet to come up with a comfortable way to discuss it with someone I barely know. So I just default to paying. Story 139. Before I got married, I went on over 40 first dates with women. These were informal and low-key, mostly going for coffee. I paid for the coffee every time. The funniest thing was that the coffee shop owner started giving me advice on whether to say yes or no to them. I felt like that was an acceptable way to get started. For dates after that, I went to movies followed by a light dinner and drinks. I paid for all of this. I consider that the cost of initial dating. For subsequent dates, we switched off, each planning one date in turn, and whoever planned the date paid for it. I never had a problem with this because I was getting a crash course in how to best date, and it helped me decide if I really wanted to date the person. A friend of mine did something similar but went to expensive places. If you asked him, he would say paying for those early dates was a mistake since his date ordered lobster. To me, being able to afford basic dating is a prerequisite, but you choose places based on what you can afford. Fortunately, I live in an area with many fun, moderately priced places to eat. Story 140. I always pay for the first few. Does it really fit with feminism? No, not really. However, at the end of the day, you want the woman to be attracted to you, right? Also, to be fair, think of it this way. Would you be bothered if a woman didn't put a decent amount of effort into her appearance? I'm pretty sure I would, and I'd want to see some basic effort saying, yes, you're trying to look pretty. Sure, we have to put on a nice shirt and look clean as well, but it is less work than putting on makeup. Men are attracted to the visual. Women are attracted to the visual instability. It's just the way it is, and if you want to win, you have to get with the program. Story 141. That would depend on how it went. If she was on the phone the whole date, I am not paying for that. If she was genuinely out with me, rather than on Instagram or TikTok, then sure. It is not going to affect me financially. It is what I was taught to do unless given a reason not to. Story 142. On the first date, it feels like one of those social norms where there is a little song and dance that always plays out the same way. The man should offer to pay because that is expected, and if he does not, she might think he is not a gentleman. The woman should act surprised and graciously offer to split because that is expected, and if she does not, he may think she is entitled. The man should say he appreciates it, but really, he will take care of it. If he does not, she may think he was not genuine when he first offered. She should then smile coyly and be thankful because if she does not, he may think she is not ladylike. Once you have built up a higher level of comfort and ease around each other, these things start to matter less. Story 143. For a very first date, if I asked her out, yeah, I will pay, no questions asked. If there are follow-up dates that go well, I will offer to pay. If we become a couple, then we will talk about either going 50-50 or alternating who pays. That is my rule. Story 144. What I think and what I do are two different things. I always thought, whoever asked the other out should pay. With how society is and being politically correct, the first date should always be you pay for your share. I am not talking 50-50. I mean, you pay for what you ordered. I personally am old school, so I pay for my dates. If I had a great time, I want her to know that by treating her for the night out. If the first date was horrible, I see it as a small price to end my suffering. It makes me feel better when I never call her again. After the first date, it should be more of a 50-50 relationship. That never happens, not even after marriage. As a guy, the best you can hope for is for her to occasionally offer to pay or pay the tip. It's not worth thinking or arguing about. I just pay all if I want to go out. If I don't have the money, I just don't go. Story 145. It is old-fashioned for men to pay on dates. Historically, men have been the ones who pay for dates. It is like tradition. If a woman wants to take you out on a date and insists on paying, then I see no issue with that. Allow her to do it. Story 146. If I invite, I pay. If I get invited, we split. If we plan together, we split, but I might pay if the vibe is authentic. Story 147. My opinion has always been that the person who offers the date should at least offer to pay. Yes, that means that most of the time the man will pay, and I accept that. Early on in a relationship, I think it is normal socially as part of this process for the man to manage the financial considerations of the courtship. As the relationship becomes stable, the two of you begin the process of figuring out how many things in the relationship should be shared, including costs. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.